And he is going to present his famous Miami report. Please welcome our friend Craig Studnicki from ISP.
ABBA. My daughter likes ABBA. I'm a Jersey boy. I'm a Springsteen guy. I'm born to run. It's perfect. Hi, everyone. Hey, John. Teresa, I want to thank you. Again, this is, I think, our third year in a row where you invited me back, so I guess I did a pretty decent job the first 2 years, so I better not drop the ball today. Wrote a story about Miami. They said that there were around 25,000 condos for sale as a result of the financial crisis of '08. I didn't have any gray hair then. They also said it was a 10-year supply. Now, all of us, most of us anyway, we're in real estate sales. You can't sell anything without a sense of urgency, ever. And when the New York Times writes a story that says there's 10 years supply, oh baby, there's no way you can create urgency. So I was sitting in my office in Aventura with my colleague, Athena Rosano, who does all the research for the Miami report, and she whispers in my ear, Craig, we didn't build 25,000 condos in Miami. How could there be 25,000 condos for sale? Good point. So then I called every developer that I know, I guess I know them all now. I called every lender that foreclosed on all these buildings, and I found out it wasn't 25,000, it was 11,502. And trust me guys, I double checked it, triple checked it, quadruple checked it, 11,502. I stuck my New Jersey neck out and said, that's not 10 years, that's a 5-year supply. In 2 years, it was all gone. In 2010 and 11, it was all gone. It was all gone mostly from South Americans because there was no mortgage money in the United States back then because you couldn't get a fair appraisal from an appraiser if you stood on your head. And for me personally, that's the time I fell in love with Miami. Because I realized no matter what you throw at her, she comes roaring back because she is perhaps the most delightful place on the planet to work and live. I published the Miami report every year thereafter, once a year, until COVID. COVID, my God, did it create a lot of changes. And I found that the information was changing like every 3 months, quarterly. So I found myself having to do it quarterly. And I had to do it on YouTube because of, remember those two ugly words, social distancing? I couldn't get together with anybody. So we did it on YouTube. And sure enough, here we are, towards the end of July, the middle of, or the beginning of Q3 of 2024, and sure enough, things have changed again. So I am presenting to you the Miami report of Q2 of 2024, and I promise you, I'm informed, a lot more informed than you were this morning. And if I really do a good job, Teresa, you're gonna be as stoked as you have ever been. So let's get started, and we're gonna start with the headlines. It starts with a little bit of an ominous note. We just passed the 3-year anniversary of that tragedy in Surfside, Florida, when a condo collapsed and 98 people lost their lives. The state of Florida reacted to that tragedy, and it's affected all condos in the entire state of Florida, not just here in South Florida. Created this new law, which basically says that as of January, you can no longer waive reserve for replacements. And if your building is 30 years or older, that's the line in the sand that the state of Florida decided on. You have to hire structural engineers and architects to put your building through a physical. They're going to start looking for structural defects in the building. This is not the pool's leaking. This is no longer we're just going to patch a part of the roof that's leaking. No. We're about to go through a forensic audit structurally of all of these buildings. And it has caused 2 other ugly words: special assessments. What's happened in the state of Florida, and for that matter throughout the entire country, because by the way, forgive the tangent, I have a feeling that Florida's in a petri dish. I've been in real estate for over 40 years, and the old adage was, whatever happens in California eventually spreads throughout the country. I don't think that's true anymore. I think whatever happens in Florida spreads around the rest of the country. This is the most talked about market in the United States and perhaps even the world. And the inspections that are going on with these older buildings, well, they're older buildings go all over the United States. And these condominium associations did the same thing that Florida did. Just kick the can down the road. We'll patch the roof. We'll fix the crack in the pool. Until what happened 3 years ago. Now, personally and professionally, I think the state of Florida went a little too far. I do think this law needs to get modified, but nevertheless, it's the law. It's not a policy, it's a law. Well, people around, and here we go, look at this next one from Yahoo Finance. you gotta have to start paying attention to these headlines. In this morning's Miami Herald, our Miami Herald, they fall right into the black hole in space as Yahoo, the New York Times in 2009. There's the headline in the business section. Condos sellers in Miami face a bitter reality. Prices keep falling, and here's why. This story suggests that we have an oversupply. This story says that demand has dropped. Oh yeah? Well, give me 20 minutes. Let me clarify that nonsense. Some of you probably did see this video on Channel 10 ABC locally. Poor old guy who owns a condo in Williams Island, Aventura. He just got hit with a $240,000 assessment. These assessments, and he doesn't know what to do. He keeps dropping the price of his unit. And he's not getting any offers. And the reason he's not getting any offers is all the folks that are moving to Florida from all four corners of the United States, combined with South America, can read. And they know what's happened to the condos that are 30 years or older. We can no longer kick the structural problems down the road. Starting January, you cannot waive reserves. You've got to inspect those buildings. And folks, nobody knows really what the real effect of this is going to be in January. I'm just applying common sense here. I have a feeling we've just touched the tip of the iceberg of special assessments, because when these buildings get thoroughly examined, and now you're looking for things that are wrong. Hell, there are some structural engineers that are going to cover their ass, and they're going to find things wrong with things that aren't wrong. And that's just, I'm in my 60s, I'm just applying, once again, common sense. So what has all of this done to the state of the market in July of 2024? I really like this guy, Omar Morales. I follow his videos. Take a listen.
There's a condo crisis coming to South Florida, and you now have to be extremely careful when buying a unit in an older building. Imagine buying your first Miami condo for $200,000, only to have the building then ask you for an additional $134,000 to pay for repairs. That's exactly what happened to hundreds of people at the Cricket Club condominium in North Miami. This older condo building just proposed a nearly $30 million special assessment for repairs, including roof replacement and other capital expenditures that amount to over $134,000 per unit owner. Why is this happening? Because for the last 40 or 50 years, condominiums in Florida have voted to delay paying for capital expenditures to keep the monthly costs of living in those condos low. The state of Florida has had it and is now forcing a lot of these older condominiums to pay for much needed repairs that have been delayed for decades. This is also going to create a tsunami of opportunities for developers to tap into the land that's under these older condo buildings. It's the reason why my team and I sold an 88-unit condo building called the Carlton Terrace in Bal Harbour for roughly $130 million recently to Related Group, where they're now building the Rivage in Bal Harbour. We're only going to see more and more of these old condo redevelopment opportunities.
This is all part of the press that you're going to start hearing more and more and more about. Omar got it half right. The other half that he got wrong, I'll touch on in a second. What has all of this done to two things, pricing and supply? That's what the Miami Report always was. I will also stick my New Jersey neck out and say, you will never find a more accurate report that talks about inventory and where prices are going than the ISG-related ISG Miami Report. I work really hard on this. And I do it for two reasons. Well, three reasons. One, I got to keep myself motivated. I got to keep myself stoked. Two, I got to keep the 500 agents that work for me in the same mindset. And thirdly, yeah, it helps brand my company. Teresa Kinney, for example, keeps inviting me back because this kind of works. So let's take a look at it. I've been here for 32 years from New Jersey, and in that period of time, I realized, you see this number way up in the right-hand corner, 22,000? That's more or less the amount of supply, resale inventory in MLS that is always in MLS, Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach counties combined. Well, COVID happened. And people came from all over the United States and started buying real estate like crazy. When you have, look at what happened a year ago. At the end of Q2, there were 8,300 condos for sale in the Tri-County area. Oh yeah, that's a seller's market. They had the advantage. Their prices were going up, buyers didn't have a choice, but if they were coming from California, New York, it wasn't a big deal. Because even when the prices were going up, it's still a bargain to them. We all benefited from that mindset. But I had a concern, like every other broker in this room, that's trying to measure the profitability. When you're down to 8,300 units per county, that's less than 3,000 per county. How do you make a profit? How do you make a profit if there's nothing to sell? And that was going the wrong way. And then look what happened. Slowly but surely, we got more inventory. Now we're at 20,000 as of at the end of June, only 3 weeks ago. We got a fair fight. It's not a seller's market. It's not a buyer's market. We got a level playing field. This is a fair contest. We should all exhale, huh? Not so fast. 90% of the 20,000 are over 30 years of age. 90%. About a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago, a lot of the owners of these old buildings were getting wind of these special assessment issues and how the state of Florida was going to change the rules. And they called their local friendly realtor and they said, "This is my apartment, I got to get the hell out of here." That was a year and a half ago. Today, you're late. Let me go through some of these numbers. It is very important to all the brokers in this room that you age the inventory for your agents. It's also very important for your clients because they'll buy into these headlines, even from our own Miami Herald, and you will lose the sense of urgency. So we took the time to age them. Less than 10 years old, 10 to 30 years old, because they're not subject to the milestone law that is in fact in place this coming January in just 5 months, like these are. Look what happened. From the end of March until the end of June, the amount of inventory in the Tri-County area went from 812 to 709. Yeah, that's 709 condos, less than 10 years old, in the Tri-County area. It's no longer a fair fight. If you're looking for someone who's moving here from any part of the US or all of South America, because anybody here that does business in South America knows that South American sales are up again. They're all looking for that stuff because it's a long way before special assessments ruin their lives. And by the way, this group and this group, for the most part, the condominium associations have already adjusted. They already have a line item for reserve for replacements. Some of them have even instituted some modest reserve for capital special assessments. I live in a building that's a little over 20 years old in Sunny Isles Beach. Yeah, I got hit with a couple of special assessments in the last couple of years, but we're good. We have a fat reserve for replacement account. We're okay. These are the categories that people want. Look what happened to the stuff that's 10 to 30 years old. It went down. Now look at the stuff that's over 30 years old. It went up. One of the things that troubled me, though, when I looked at these numbers, I said to this woman, Athena Rosano, that does all my research, "Are you telling me, even in this category, we only sold 100 units in April, May, and June in the Tri-County area? That's really sad." Nope. Here's what really happened. We sold almost all of them. There were 812 for sale. We sold 713. We added 610, giving us, yeah, that's your average per month, giving you 709. Whoa, you sold almost all of them? Well, the next obvious question should be, what did that do to pricing? It's up 9%. The average condominium, Dade, Broward, Palm Beach combined, in the first 6 months of this year is up 9% value. Prices are falling, Miami Herald, please. You gotta age the inventory, baby. If you lump it all in one big basket, you're gonna mislead the whole world. Up 9%. Teresa, we've been around a little bit. If 9% was an annual appreciation, we would be saying, "Oh my God, was that a phenomenal year for owners of real estate who bought something new?" Guys, this is 6 months. A lot of folks are asking me, what do you think the next 6 months will be like? Probably a lot like the first 6 months. Shakespeare, what is past is prologue. What has happened will happen again, because this is what everybody wants. What about the stuff that's 10 to 30 years old? Same pattern. We sold almost all of them. There were 2,100 for sale at the end of March. You sold almost 2,000 of them in April, May, and June. You replace them with another 1,620. What did it do to pricing? In this category, we're up 7%. Whew. Blend it together, you're up 8% in 6 months with high mortgage rates. Oh, we'll get to mortgage rates in a second. What about the stuff that's north of 30 years old, that's really subject to these milestone initiatives that take place in January? Well, they went up. There were 15,000, close to 18,000. We only sold 1,000 of them. We added 3,000. You see what I mean? You're a little bit late to the race. Everybody please exhale for this next slide. Yeah. That's where the Herald has it right, but you can't lump it together. You gotta age this stuff or you will reach the wrong conclusion. Yeah, you know who wants to buy it? Everyone wants to sell. Nobody's buying that stuff. And if you talk to your friendly mortgage lenders, and a lot of them out there, I saw when I was walking in the room, nobody wants to lend on that stuff because you really are investing into a black hole. You don't know how deep the special assessments are going to be. 90% of these buildings that are over 30 years are broke. They're insolvent. They don't have the money in the reserve for replacement accounts that the state requires them to have. They don't have a choice. They've got to do special assessments. Except most of the people who live in these older buildings are a little older. A lot of them are retired. They don't want to write those checks. So what are they going to do? I don't know. Nobody knows. But I'm telling you, that part isn't so rosy. But let's move on. So anyway, here's a quick recap. I offer this recap because when you add 709 that are less than 10 years old to 1788 that are 10 to 30 years old, you have less than 2,500 condos for sale, Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach combined. That's not a fair fight. It's a seller's market. Miami Herald this morning suggested that demand has slowed down. Give me a few minutes, I'm going to blow that argument right out of the water. We don't have a whole lot of supply. In this case, you do have a seller's market, and I think you'd have to absolutely expect prices to pop up a little bit, particularly if Jerome Powell gets his way. And I'll talk about that in a second. Here's where Omar Morales got it wrong. The 3rd District Court of Appeals in March made a decision that is way overreaching. It's being appealed to the state Supreme Court. Most of you were thinking, well, these older buildings are going to be perfect buyout opportunities for big companies like Related. Well, when this ruling came through, Related backed away from about 4 or 5 buyouts that they were negotiating. Why? Well, it's a long story, but here's the bottom line. The 3rd District Court of Appeals said, since so many of these older buildings are filled with older people, we're going to protect those people. You want to do a buyout, you got to get 100% consent. 100%. Practical world, that's impossible. So these buildings, these bulk buying opportunities for the moment, are off the table, which further constrains the inventory that's older, making the stuff that's 10 to 30 years old really attractive. Resales for houses, this is actually some good news. You have about a little over 10,000 houses for sale in the Tri-County area. That's actually a fair fight. Most of the houses, what I call C houses, are priced between $500,000 and $1.5 million. I am a huge fan of Mayor Francis Suarez of Miami. I don't think we have ever had a combination of a salesman and a mayor wrapped in one individual like we do in him. In 2020, when we were all in quarantine, he was on planes flying crisscrossing the country and recruiting Fortune 400, Fortune 500 companies to come to Florida. And so far right now, you have 204 of them. The big one everyone brags about all the time is Citadel, and I'll end my presentation with that. They're coming with a lot of young families that are working for these companies, and they want those houses near schools, near soccer fields. At the moment, we've got them. In 6 months, I'm not so sure, and I'll tell you why. By the way, they performed so beautifully. In the first 6 months of this year, they're up 6%. Now let's go to the pricing forecast. For those of you that think that the most powerful man in the United States lives in the White House, you're right, except when it comes to money supply and interest rates. It's this guy. Anybody who's in real estate knows you got to be beholden to him. He's been changing his mind here and there. I think back in February or March, he said he's going to lower rates 3 times this year. And in May, he said, only once. And then a few weeks ago, no, I changed my mind. Canada lowered their rates a couple days ago. Europe and Asia, they've lowered, in South America, they lowered their rates a couple months ago. We've been the holdout. He's been nervous about inflation. You can't blame him for that. Because he did lower the interest rates to 0 in 2020 to keep us from slipping into a psychological recession, depression, call it what you like, because of COVID. And he said it was going to cause inflation, and it did, and he's been fighting it. He's done a hell of a job, in my opinion. I think most people will as well, but he's changed courses. Now, this one says just 1 cut. I didn't have a chance to change the slide. Now he's saying at least 2 starting in September, 0.25, or what Wall Streeters call 25 basis points. Now, look at this lady. You see her on Shark Tank. I had a chance to meet her once in New York. The woman's got balls. She has no problem expressing her opinion. But look what she writes. The minute those rates go down, all hell is going to break loose. She's not talking about Florida. She's talking about the United States. Because even the National Association of Home Builders for the last few years have been saying over and over again, we're somewhere between 5 to 6 million single-family homes short of demand. What's the cork in the bottle? High mortgage rates. That's what's holding this whole thing back. And she's the one saying, once this goes down, Watch what happens. Folks, we're 6 weeks away, more or less, from the first dive of interest rates going south. I have a strong suspicion Barbara Corcoran's right. Now, when I go through the supply stuff, a lot of realtors say, well, Craig, this will all get compensated by new construction. Wouldn't that be nice if that were true? So here's a quick map as of June 30th of all the new projects that are being promoted from Miami all the way up to Pompano. This doesn't include Palm Beach, sorry, it doesn't. There's 112 of them. The red, pink color are what I call traditional condos. The blue color are what has become kind of popular, I guess, these short-term rentals, these condo hotels, this Airbnb stuff. I don't really focus my presentation on that stuff. I focus it on the kind of condo you can raise your family in. The condos with rental restrictions. Those big appreciation numbers I showed you earlier, that's that category. It's the condos with rental restrictions. When you look at this map, you can see most of the short-term rentals are all clustered in the Brooklyn and downtown Miami area. But this gives you an idea of what's happening throughout the rest of at least the Broward and Dade. This is perspective. In the 2000s, which led up to 08, we built too many, 59,000 condos in 275 buildings. That's not too many, guys, that's way too many. It kind of led in part, along with subprime lending, to the disaster of 08. But eventually, they all got sold and everybody lived happily ever after. In the last cycle, which began in 2012, we built just under 20,000 condos. In my opinion, when you look at the population growth numbers in Florida, that's exactly what we need to build. Every 10 years, just to accommodate population growth. No, Miami Herald, you got it wrong. You don't have any idea about this, the strength of the demand curve in South Florida, but I'll show you in a second. In this cycle, that pink number, it's only 79 buildings, 11,000 units. Here's the problem. You see this number, 4,100? That's the amount of condos that are actually under construction. Well, that's it. We need 20,000. We're only building 4,100. Why? Are they not selling? No, that's not the issue. They're all selling brilliantly. The problem is they can't manufacture the product. At least, as of a year ago, a developer couldn't possibly pin the tail on the donkey on construction costs. Concrete, glass, and steel, these components that go into a building, were rising like crazy because of inflation. That has now plateaued. That's stabilized. What are we waiting for? We're waiting for interest rates to come down. I suspect, and you can too, that when we move into 2025, the remaining 7220 will all be breaking ground. The champagne will be popping. Those big red gold scissors with those big red ribbons will be happening all over again. But you have to wait now for the interest rates to settle. Folks, we have a little bit of a supply problem because it's good that we're at least building 4,000. But most of these now are what we call super tall buildings. One of the most beautiful buildings that's hit the skyline of Miami is the Aston Martin in downtown Miami. It's beautiful. It took them over 6 years to build that 70-story building. Just use that as a little bit of a barometer. I'm very friendly with the people from PMG that just broke ground on the Waldorf Astoria. It's the first 100-story building to come to Miami. And now they reluctantly admit to me they're hoping to get it done by 2030. Well, the people who are moving to Florida, they need a roof over their head, I don't know, now? I mean, I'm in my 60s. I don't buy green bananas anymore. I don't know how much longer. I don't think you can kick the can down the road forever. So what's happened is when you tell the buyers the truth about delivery dates, if they have any idea, any understanding of construction schedules, they go to what's existing. Anything less than 10 years old, that's the first number. That's the first, that is category of inventory that they're attracted to. Demand. Anyway, that's supply. It's tight. If Jerome Powell gets his way, watch what happens with the inventory that's less than 30 years old in MLS in the next 6 months. I don't have a crystal ball. I just study data. And when you connect the dots, the data is leading you to two things: much higher prices. And when mortgage rates go down, that will get fueled big time. This is one of my favorite slides to put things in perspective, but I got a couple of nice surprises for you. One that Teresa asked me to bring back from last year. Whoops, what happened? Hello. I lost my presentation, guys. 5 billion people 100 years ago. Oh, here we go. Thank you. Your ancestors, my ancestors, they've been walking the planet for tens of thousands of years. So put this in perspective. It took Not just until 100 years ago, we had 1.5 billion. We added 6.5 billion people in the last 100 years, with all kinds of wars going on, World War I, World War II, Vietnam, all those horrible skirmishes in Europe and Africa, and we still added 6.5 billion people. Demographers call this exponential growth. What will it look like in the next 100 years? More than likely more. More than likely more. The fastest growing country in the world by population is India. Number 2 is China. And number 3 is the good old USA. This is the world population. Let's see if I get this working. This is live from the United Nations. This will give you a perspective. A lot of babies being born, baby. We're living longer because of medical technology, and babies are being born. Look what, even as I'm speaking, look what's going on around the world. And the third fastest growing in this category is the good old US of A. 10 years, let me give you additional perspective because the Miami Herald really pissed me off this morning. And if you read that article too, I want you to have the proper perspective before you leave today. 10 years ago, the most populated state, or the fastest growing state, I should say, in the United States was California, followed by Texas, followed by Florida. Look what's happened now. It's Texas and Florida, mostly. It's Fraser Ali. If you're a soccer fan, it's Argentina and Colombia. We're going after each other every single year. 2 years ago, Florida was the fastest growing state. Last year was Texas. We'll see what happens this year. But we're growing, Miami Herald, and it continues to grow. California and New York. California is the most populated state in the country, but look at those numbers. Last year, they were 49 out of 50 states, and New York slid in at 50. The United States Census Bureau measures population this way. They measure births, they subtract deaths, they add the people that are moving into a state, and they use that with tax returns and driver's licenses, pretty simple. And then they deduct the people moving out with the same method, and that equals X. Is this sobering? X for New York made them 50 out of 50 states, and California 49. People are leaving. A lot of it had to do with Donald Trump's tax policy of 2017. The big winners from that tax reform were Texas and Florida, and you can see so in the numbers. Then you had people like Ken Griffin, who made a huge bet. He uprooted the whole Citadel organization from Chicago, brought them to Miami. And recently he said, at the board meeting the other night, he proposed this super tall office tower on Brickell Avenue. He said the future of American business is Miami. How about that? And he's not the only one. There's, again, 204 Fortune 400 and 500 companies relocating all to South Florida, most in Miami. You've heard of Goldman Sachs coming to Fort Lauderdale, for example. No, you can expect the population of Florida to continue to rise. And here's how it sets up. As far as GDP goes, California is still one, followed by Texas, followed by New York. Look at Florida. I asked Athena, hey, if Florida was a country, how would we rank? And you can see it highlighted on the right side of the screen. We're bigger than Russia. We're bigger than Mexico. We're bigger than Australia. We're the 13th or 14th largest economy in the world. And at the trajectory we're on, this is only going to get bigger. How about that? Florida is no longer an economy dependent on tourism. Folks, we've become an economic engine. And the word that describes this economic engine is diversification. We have companies from all over the world coming to South Florida, growing their businesses, bringing young people with them. Lots of them little entrepreneurs that are going to try to grow their own. We're all starting to feed off of this exponential growth in South Florida. No, Miami Herald, we don't have a demand problem. We might have a supply problem, but you sure as hell don't have a demand problem. All right. I'm ending my presentation with this because Teresa asked me to bring it back. It's kind of popular last year. This probably puts Florida in the greatest perspective of all. We found this on the internet. Last year I did it through 2022. Now I'm going to do it through 2023. These are the top 20 most populated states in the U.S. And 100 years ago, more or less 1920, when the population of the U.S. was 107 million, the most populated state in the country was New York, followed by Pennsylvania, Illinois, Ohio, and Texas. They ran out the top 5. Where's Florida? You're not going to see her for a while. And the population of those top 5 states, they really don't change, slowly emerge. You're not going to see Florida represented by a big red flag down here until we get to the end of the 1940s And here she comes. I feel like the sportscaster at the Kentucky Derby, but watch this. She's popping, baby. Look at her. She's already like in the top 10. She's passing everybody. And by the way, right now you're in the 1960s when we invented air conditioning. And I swear to God, I looked this up myself. When we invented air conditioning, it became a lot more pleasant to live in Florida during the summer.
1970?
No, I'm telling you, I looked it up myself. In the 70s and 80s, air travel became affordable. It wasn't just for the wealthy. Everybody come and they came, and obviously in the 70s and 80s we started to develop central air conditioning. Oh, this place started humming. And then we look at Florida now, Mike. You're at number 4. You are number 4. When you, in the 90s, that's when South America really discovered South Florida. And it continued to propel Florida up and up and up. Look at us. And in the 2000s, look, California passed New York. Sorry, I lost track because I was bragging about Florida so much. We just continue to grow and grow. This is not something that happened since COVID, guys. This has been happening before most of us were even born. In 2012, say goodbye to New York. We passed New York, which was the most populated state in the country forever and ever. And we finally passed them in 2012. And we landed in 2023, number 3 in the country, and we continue to grow. The population of the U.S. today is 340 million. They expect it to hit 400 million by the year 2050. And I can tell you, no matter what the policies are in Washington, D.C., there's nothing that's stopping this. And for no other reason, we're living longer, and our families continue to grow. And slowly but surely, perhaps the most popular state in the whole country is Florida. The most talked about city in that state is what we get to sell every single day. Every single day. I want to, first of all, thank Teresa Kinney for giving me the opportunity to present the Miami Report again to all of you. I hope that you all found this information helpful. Well, I thank you for your time and attention. Next year, present Miami Report 2025. Mwah! Thank you.